but the younger they are, the easier they blend because at the younger ages, they really want to be part of something,
Yeah.
right? They want to be included. And so anything you can do to help them feel part of this new family and everything, that they'll go for it. But after like 12 teenage years, they're looking to be more independent anyway, trying to figure out who they are, and the last thing they want to be is part of your family. That's right. So
Well, because they figure too, a few more years, I'm out of here.
yeah, there's always that kind of an attitude that, they really, though, as they get older, they're going to test you. And that's where you need to be strong in your spousal relationship and understand that your marriage comes before them, because they're going to try to weasel their way in between and try to break you up, especially if you're remarried, right? But under 12 generally will blend easier. After 12, they're trying to figure out who they are as a real person, and they're getting closer to being more independent and making their own mind about everything. So it's going to be tougher. It's not impossible, it's just tougher. And they're going to be constantly testing you. And especially with the teenagers, that's where a lot of, when blended families come together and there are teenagers, that's when they really have hard times. Because they don't understand the whole stewardship versus ownership thing when it comes to the kids, and that the marriage needs to be the biggest influence on the kids so that when they get married down the road, they understand how to do marriage. That's part of that. Okay. I've got a little bit of time left. I want to go through quite a few scriptures. This lesson has a lot of scriptures that we talk about in it. The first one basically is the blessings. And we start off with Psalms 127:3, which says, and this is mostly out of the Old King James, just because when they put the books together, we didn't have to worry about copyrights. So, the wording is, it still has all the THs on the end of a lot of things and all that kind of stuff. But Psalm 127:3, lo, children are a heritage of the Lord, and the fruit of the womb is his reward. So children are a blessing. They are a gift. Proverbs 23:24, the father of the righteous shall greatly rejoice, and he that begetteth a wise child shall have joy of him. So when you do a good job as a parent, the blessing is people will see you did a good job because they'll see how good your kids behave. And your kids will be wise, right? Proverbs 20:11, even a child is known by his doings, whether his work be pure and whether it be right. So back when I was a kid, there weren't any fences anywhere. We could walk through people's yards to get to another house, all that kind of stuff. We just ran wild, But everybody knew who we were and who our parents were. And if we ever did anything wrong, they knew exactly who to call, right? So even a child is known by what he does and who his parents are. So the blessing is when you're doing a good job raising up God's kid to know God and what's right, so that when he's old, he won't depart from that. And the blessing is down the road when they do the same thing with their kids and your grandkids, right? The good thing about being a grandparent is you get to spoil the kid and then give them back. Proverbs 17:6, children's children are the crown of old men, and the glory of children are their fathers. Now, I think so grandkids are the glory, the crown of a good parent is the grandkids, right? The glory of children are their fathers. So kids, as they're growing up, a lot of how their peers talk about them, relate to them, and all that kind of stuff has a lot to do with who their father is. If you have a good father, or had one, that fatherly influence says a lot about who you are as a kid, right? One of the biggest problems we have today is nobody knows who their father is, or it was a bad one, right? Satan wants to destroy the fathers. We have so many fatherless homes. I don't even know what the percentage of people in jail is, but it's like 70 or 80% or something like that that had no father at all in the home. So fatherlessness is what Satan is trying to do to destroy families, and then when the family goes, falls apart, then society falls apart. So guys, be a good father. Even if you didn't have one, figure out how to be one, right? All right. Parental duties. Mostly everything in Proverbs here. Talks about teaching, correction, discipline, punishment, and all those kind of things. Lesson 9, I think we talk in more depth about that whole process. Have a little staircase that talks about that as an example. The big one, Proverbs 22:6, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he's old, he'll not depart from it. So your job as a parent is to train your kids. And then all those blessings flow from that. 22:15.
Well, let me just back up on that. Not only to train the kids, but to continually show them what a godly marriage is,
Right.
and what a godly mom and dad, what they look like.
Yeah. The father's duty is to represent our heavenly Father to the family. That's his job. Okay. Foolishness, this is 22:15. Foolishness is bound in the heart of a child, but the rod of correction shall drive it far from him. So you don't have to teach a kid how to be bad. They're born that way. But you can beat it out of them, right? That's what it says, right? Now,
Rephrase.
well, that was, a couple of generations ago.
Yes.
People did that. We had the Board of Education in my house. And I got very well acquainted with it. But these days, you mentioned CPS, you try to paddle a kid, they call CPS on you. It's totally messed up. And because I don't know, somewhere back in the 70s or something, there was a book put out by a Dr. Spock, and it was like, oh, spanking is bad, and all that kind of stuff. And so people didn't do it, they just talk them to death. Right? And, so there was not anything, and we get into that whole discipline and punishment stuff in the other chapter, but, question
I was
or
going to
comment.
say that the example that you were saying, I tried that with my kids. I would give them an option. Do you want me to talk to you about this incident, or do you want a spanking? And they said, Mom, we prefer the spanking. I said, what? What's the problem? Mom, we'll be here for 2 hours listening to you. If we get a spanking, it will be over with, and then we can go back outside to play.
Right.
They value their time.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, yeah. You knew you were, or if you ever heard your middle name. If your middle name, your first and middle name, you are in big trouble. But,
Speaking of the look, I have a little quick story I want to share. Our daughter, she's our youngest one, she's a naturopathic doctor. Her and her girlfriend, Michelle wasn't married, I don't believe then.
well, they're like in high school, or
Yeah, they
maybe
were
just
in
out of high school.
Well, no, because she was, Darlene was pregnant.
Oh, that's true.
It was after high school.
So a
She
few
was-
years after high school.
Darlene was married, her best friend, and Michelle wasn't. But Darlene was going to be a mom. She just found out that she was pregnant. And they're in our house in the kitchen table having girl talk. And I'm trying not to listen, you know, I'm in the kitchen doing something. And all of a sudden, Darlene says to Michelle, I gotta practice, Michelle. And Michelle says, practice what? And she says, I gotta practice being a mean mom. Because, you know, I'm gonna have a baby pretty soon. And Michelle says, what do you mean a mean mom? She says, you know, the look. I have to practice the look. This is before Isabel was even born. And I mean, I lost it. I was in that kitchen.
There's more than one look, though. There's more than one look, and each
Oh.
one means something.
Oh, yeah.
It's so funny, but here they are practicing the look.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so according to the Word of God, children are born foolish.
Yes.
And our job as parents is to get that out of them. Whatever you got to do, right? The next proverb, 23:13, is kind of similar. It says, withhold not correction from the child. For if thou beatest him with the rod, he shall not die. Okay? So I have to put these in because that's what the word says, right? Good luck doing that, though.
Yeah.
You know, just make sure nobody's looking, right? Yes.
Well, you know, this is what the word says. So regardless of what's the consequences society gives us, shouldn't we be willing to face those for Christ's sake?
Exactly.
You know, and that's what's wrong with,
Yeah. We need to demonstrate what happens.
I mean, we got it, and look where we're
Yeah.
at. So, you know, raise
Yeah.
a child and he'll come back. Well,
Right. Oh, I totally went away.
Well, yeah.
You know, I didn't come back till I was 50. You know, but I got trained up until I was like 14, 15 years old, and then I departed, but I came back at 50.
And spanking isn't for every kid too. It just depends on the kid. There's a lot of research that's been done that like with certain kids that are spanked, they have a higher chance of being more violent amongst their peers and this and that. So I think there's a lot of good research out there too that speaks for both sides. Also, when it comes to adopting and like foster parenting, because we had friends who were foster parents. While they were foster parents and trying to adopt, they weren't allowed to spank, which was hard for them. It was actually Pastor Ben because he was raised in a house where he was spanked. So there are just, I don't know, just different consequences too that can be used
Yeah.
in lieu
Well,
of spanking.
you know, there's so many new laws about that now, you know, and part of the problem, we got away from discipline and punishment to abuse.
Right.
And then everybody starts claiming, even if you spank them, it's abuse. So it transitioned, you know, it morphed from discipline to abuse. And, you know, society has changed to where any sort of physical contact
Right.
with your
Warrants
kid
victim card, yeah.
is abuse,
Yeah.
right?
My mother used to say that, I brought you into this world and I can take you out.
Oh, yeah, mine did too.
Yeah. So, you know, I mean, back in, I think it was in Deuteronomy somewhere, it talked about when the child was like 18 and he was still being a rebel, that the parents had to bring him to the town square and say, you know, hey, we're taking our hands off this kid. He's total rebellion, and then he gets stoned in public, right? I mean, discipline was a pretty severe thing back then. But God chastises us because he loves us. Now, part of the difference in that whole punishment and discipline kind of thing is how is it being done?
Of course, yeah.
From what context, right? You know, I had a pretty good example. My mom would catch me doing stuff and then say, wait till your father gets home, right? And then whenever it was time to actually execute the sentence, they were both right there, you know, on the edge of the bed or whatever, and I'd be over my dad's knee, you know, Board of Education,